All right, good morning. Can everybody hear me? Yes? Okay. My name is Taylor, K7TAY, and I'm here to talk to you about SOTA, or Summits on the Air. I guess I'll start just by telling you how I got involved. First, I was licensed back in 2004 in North Carolina, where I grew up. And SOTA is relatively new to ham radio. A couple of years ago, my husband heard about it, wanted to try it out. To be honest, I didn't really see the appeal in, hiking up a mountain carrying a lot of gear on your back just to make a few contacts. I was more than willing to go on the hiking part of it. But anyway, so he did that for a few months, and he kind of predicted this. He knows that I'm a competitive person. And ultimately, I thought, well, I'm doing all the same work to get up there. Why aren't I getting the points too? So I've been hooked ever since. It's a really good activity that everybody can get involved in, whether you want to just do it from the comfort of your home as a chaser, or if you do want to get out there and make a little bit of effort to get to the top. So a little bit of history about SOTA. It was the idea of John Linford, G3WGV. He and a buddy of his, I guess, kind of put the program together. It first started in England back in 2002, and then it later came to the U.S. in 2007. The Pacific Northwest got involved, I believe, in 2010. Initially, when it came to the U.S., it was, I think, two lands, so New York and New Jersey, that picked it up first. It is an award program that is designed both for activators, or mountain goats, and chasers, shack sloths. There are point values given to the summits. Basically, the higher the summit, the more points that you'll get. And both chasers and activators get those points.
You get more if there's snow there too, right?
You can. Yeah, I'll talk about that. So the summits are broken down by association. So these could either be countries or geographic areas. There are currently 79 active associations. So for example, England is its own association. Oregon is its own association. However, in the U.S., not every single state on its own would be an association. So for example, North Carolina and South Carolina together form their own association. Each association may have one or more regions, so this kind of further breaks it down geographically. Here in Oregon, we have 10 regions. These are things like Cascades North, Cascades Middle, Central Coast, Willamette Valley, that sort of thing. For each association, there is an association manager who makes up the rules and guidelines for that particular area. There are general SOTA guidelines, but it's up to the association manager to define some more specific things. Each summit has its own designation, and I've got an example here. So this first part here, Whiskey 7 Oscar, describes the association, so this is Oregon. The region, CN, or Cascades North, and the summit number, 001. This is the example for Mount Hood, the summit code for Mount Hood. SOTA uses the same definition of a summit that is used in mountaineering. The recommended minimum prominence is 150 meters or 492 feet. The prominence value is the vertical separation from the peak to the saddle. I've got a diagram on the next slide there that talks about it. Summits that are accessible by road can be included in the summit database. However, operating from a vehicle is prohibited. So the idea here is you've got to make a little bit of effort to get up there to the top. So here's a diagram showing prominence. You can see this peak here on the left is at 1,000 feet. It has 900 feet of prominence to that saddle. This other summit here that's only 300 feet has 150 vertical separation between it and the next peak. And the other one there only has 300 feet of vertical separation. So this, of all of these three, would be the only one that would be included in SOTA. So here are some of the general guidelines that apply. Activators have to comply with all local land use regulation. So this means, for example, you can't trespass if a summit is on private property. You obviously need to get permission from the landowner to get up there. The final ascent must be non-motorized. And this would be an example of what that final ascent must be. That's something that would be defined within the association. Operation must be within the activation zone. So this gives you a little bit of wiggle room if, for example, you can't actually get up to the summit or it's not safe to do so. As long as your transceiver is within this activation zone, you can still get points for it. All equipment must be carried by the activator team, or if you're Steve, WG0AT in Colorado, you've got a couple of goats, you can take Peanut and Brewster up there with you and get them to carry your heavy gear for you. Operation from a portable power source. And also the idea here is if you do get to the top of a summit that has like a repeater site or gear that's up there, you know, you can't really use any of that stuff. So you're responsible for bringing all of your gear. In order to receive points as an activator, you need to talk to at least 4 different stations. You can still be considered as an activator, even if you just make 1 contact, but in order to get the points, you need to talk to 4 different stations. And all modes are accepted. Sideband, CW, and FM are probably the more common ones. So chasers, of course, SOTA would not be possible or be really difficult if they weren't around. There's a website, sotawatch.org, that activators can go to. They can alert themselves days or even hours in advance, basically, to say, hey, I'm going to be on this summit at about this time, on this frequency, in this mode. So it gives chasers an opportunity to kind of know in advance where someone is going to be so they can try to make contact with them. The other part of this is spotting, where either the activator himself can self-spot when he actually gets up on the mountain and has all of his gear out and is ready to talk. Or it's also something that chasers will do, where if they talk to an activator, they can spot that person for other chasers, or at least say, you know, he's weak but readable on, you know, whatever it happens to be or that person's location. Chasers can also help coordinate the conversations for activators. So, for example, we've been on a summit and a chaser will say, hey, there's this other guy on another summit and he wants to try to talk to you. Can you dial down to this frequency? So that's another way that they play an important role here. And also, probably one of the most important ones is in the event of an emergency. This past fall, Dan and I were in eastern Oregon. We had planned to hike a couple of peaks out there. We were taking the Wallowa Tramway up to Mount Howard, and the peaks were going to be on the other side of that. We had a really tight schedule. The first tram ride up was like at 10:30 in the morning, and the last ride down was at 4:45. We made it to the 2 peaks, and we're right on schedule. We got to the tramway within the period of time, and nobody was there. It was closed. So that was kind of a scary situation. But one of the chasers that we had talked to, he was actually a local guy, we were able to get back in touch with him, and he helped us get back in touch with the tramway operator, and we got down okay. But so that's just an example of how they can help. So the point system, I mentioned that activators and chasers get the same point. The summits are either going to be 1, 2, 4, 6, or 10 points. Obviously, the higher the summit, the more points you get. And actually, the breakdown for which summit heights get those points is going to vary by association. There can be a 3-point seasonal bonus. This is, usually could be winter months when travel or safety concerns to the summit can be a little bit more dangerous or treacherous. So it's kind of nice that you're getting a little extra bonus there in those kind of less ideal conditions. Activators can only get points for the same summit once per year. Chasers, on the other hand, can get points for the same summit once per day. So you can see how it would, if chasers had that same limitation as activators, it would make it a little bit more difficult, but so it works out pretty well that way. Summit to summits also qualify, so if I'm activating one summit and I talk to someone else on another summit, I get chaser points for that, and vice versa for the other person. The website that both activators and chasers can go to log their entries is sotadata.org.uk. So you create an account there, and you can plug in your entries. The General SOTA program has awards starting at 100 points for both activators and chasers. I think at 1,000 points, that's where an activator would get the Mountain Goat title, and a chaser would get the Shack Sloth title. I don't know if he's here. Phil, an S7P from Eugene, he has over 14,000 chaser points, which is pretty incredible. They also give out awards based on activating or working, starting with 5 associations. For all of these awards, you have to go and submit a form to get them. They don't just send it to you by default. And you have to pay a little bit of money, I think. So this is an example of what the SOTA data website would look like, showing the activator roll of honor for the Oregon Association. I have to admit that this is a screenshot that I took a few months back, where for a very brief moment I was in second place. So I just need to, anyways. So the values are a little bit out of date, but it is kind of fun to see where you stack up. So they show how many summits you've activated, your points, any seasonal bonus points that you may have accrued, your total score, and the average points per expedition. So all of what I've talked about so far is kind of more the general SOTA program, and to give you a more specific example about what all of the rules are within an association, I'll talk here a little bit more about Oregon. So in Oregon, there are 1,990 qualified summits. So again, some of these could be on private land. The activation zone is within 80 vertical feet of the summit. And it's recommended that you make the last 100 vertical feet on foot. So if a summit is accessible by road all the way to the top, you're not supposed to drive all the way there.
What if you can't? What if you can't park and drive the remaining 100 feet?
Walk down 50, walk up 50.
Park wherever you can and then walk up. I mean,
Well, or walk
I know-
down and then walk up.
I know
Sure,
of a few where
that'll work
it's,
too.
you park at the bottom or you park at the top, that's it.
yeah, well, you can work something on, I'm sure. Oregon does have the 3-point seasonal bonus. This just got extended. It starts December 1st and goes all the way through the end of March. It applies to summits that are 5,000 feet or higher. And you can see down here at the bottom the point value for Oregon summits. So for example, summits that are less than 3,000 feet will get 1 point, between 3 and 5 they'll get 2, and so on, all the way up to summits that are 9,000 feet or higher, getting 10 points for those. So this is an example, in this particular case, Guy N7UN, who's the association manager for Oregon. He also has his own certificates for Oregon. So here's one that I got for activating 25 summits. And he just sent this one to me. I didn't even have to apply for that. That was kind of nice. There have been some recent changes with SOTA. One is it used to be the summit designator in 7-land used to just start with 2 characters, W7. But that was recently changed to have a 3 characters. So for example, Oregon is Whiskey 7 Oscar, and Washington is Whiskey 7 Whiskey. Something else that Guy ended up introducing starting this past November, if you are the first activator of a summit that just has a number, it doesn't have a defined name like Mount Hood, for example, you can actually name that summit and it'll be applied into the SOTA database. It's starting right now just in like Oregon and Idaho, but I think the plan is to kind of expand that for all of the other associations that he's involved with. The SOTA data website now shows an honor roll for summit to summits. So if you want to see where you stack up with everyone else on that, you can track that. And California recently added 3,510 new summits. So there's a lot more to activate there. So here's some tips that I came up with for a successful activation. The first one might sound obvious, but be practiced with your radio gear. There have been a number of stories or posts on mailing lists where somebody went out and got a new radio or a new antenna or everything, and they wanted to go try SOTA for the first time, and it was a terrible disaster. They couldn't get their equipment to work, and it was a big flop. So, I mean, that's a great way to learn, obviously, but if you want to try to be successful, maybe at least go out in your backyard and set up your gear, figure out how you're going to guide it, that kind of thing. Make your first trip an easy or a small hike. There are plenty of smaller summits that you can get to with very little effort. And there's one website that I'll talk about later that we've identified some good ones there. Alert before your trip, so go to the SOTA Watch website and alert yourself when you get there. Try to spot yourself if you can. Be prepared for changing weather, so dress in a lot of layers, or at least take a lot of layers. So a lot of the summits, obviously, that are going to be up higher, it gets colder, it gets windier, and the weather can change pretty rapidly. So just be prepared for that. Be prepared for failure or for things to go wrong, like when you forget your mic and leave it at home, Jerry.
Yeah.
And just know that the process is going to get a lot smoother the more you do it. We've certainly figured that out. Hike with a buddy for safety and support. Get them to carry all the heavy gear. All right, so keep in mind that you're most likely going to be carrying all your normal hiking gear, clothing, food, snacks, water, which weighs a lot, first aid kit, all of that stuff, on top of the radio gear. So one thing that can come in handy is just a handheld GPS or maps. The GPS, though, can be really good. It could have a path or the trail all the way up to the summit, so you can know if you're staying on track or not. You can also use the GPS to find out if you're within the activation zone. We also load the coordinates of the summit in our GPS so we know when we actually get there. An APRS radio can be good. Some of the activators will actually include their APERS track in their alert so that the chasers can actually spot them, or the chasers can track them and know exactly where they are or when they're getting close. You can also use an APERS radio to spot yourself when you get there. There's a special format that you have to use, but it is possible. You can also spot yourself via text message on a cell phone. There's another special format for that. And the easiest way, obviously, to spot yourself is if you happen to be on a summit that does have data coverage, and you can get on the website through your smartphone and spot yourself that way. You're going to want to carry a lightweight lithium-based battery, such as the Buddy Pole A123. That's the one that we carry. When Dan first started this, he took his ICOM 7000, which was about 5 pounds, and he learned pretty quickly that was really heavy to carry. So some other radios that we actually have used and find to be work really well, the Elecraft KX3. It's only 1.5 pounds and it's 10 watts. The Yaesu FT817 is 2.5 pounds with 5 watts. I didn't actually mention it here, but of course you could take just a handheld radio. Depending on how high the summit is, though, you might need to have prearrange some contacts with local people. But I'm kind of focusing more on the HF stuff here. For the antenna and support, an in-fed half wave wire is definitely an option. It packs up very, very small, very lightweight. However, the thing with this is you need to make sure that you've got enough room up at the top of the summit to string it out and trees that you can hang it from to get it off the ground. So knowing ahead of time what the summit is going to be like will possibly dictate what equipment you take. Other people really like a magnetic loop, such as the Alex loop. I think they have a small 2-pound magnetic loop. I'm a little skeptical of these just because I can see you taking it out and it catching wind and that being a little problematic. But there are people there that really like that. What Dan and I have relied on is a L-shaped vertical dipole made out of various buddy pole parts. And then for the mast, we either use a camera monopod or a shock cord mast. Both are really lightweight, and we guy it up. Most often, we are guying to whatever we can find: rocks, trees, branches. Very rarely do we ever have to stake it in the ground. And you'd actually be surprised. It's actually really simple for a single person to be able to set this up. So we get 2 guys going down. The mast is kind of propped up that way, and then you can guide the other one and turn, get the elements and stuff all lined up. For the counterpoise, we use our hiking sticks. So we kind of set them up in a crossing one over one another, and we attach the counterpoise to one of the wrist straps in the hiking stick. So using some of the gear that you may already be taking, getting creative that way and trying to figure out how you can utilize that without having to take more gear. Here are some of the resources that I mentioned earlier. The kind of general SOTA program website is at sota.org.uk. The database where you can go and create an account and log your points is at sotadata.org.uk. SOTA Watch I've already mentioned. The Pacific Northwest website, pnwsota.org, is a great resource. Users, activators, whoever can go and put their own trip reports. You can describe what the hike was like up to the top, if the trail is exposed or shady, whether the summit is exposed or shady, and just your general experience. And people have also identified on this website what summits might be really good ones to start out with if you just want to try something pretty low-key for your first one out. There are a couple of SOTA mailing lists that you can join. One is the North American Soda mailing list, and then there's also a mailing list for the Pacific PNW Soda website. Dan made a mapping, kind of an overlay mapping tool. I've got a screenshot on the next slide that basically it overlays all of the different summits based on region, assigns a point value to them, and it supports Garmin, Delorme, and Google Earth. So one thing that we realized when we were first getting involved in this was trying to identify the summits that would qualify and a hiking trail that would get us up to the top. So we spent a lot of time using some of these other just more general purpose hiking websites to figure out how much hiking we would need to do to get to this one particular summit and that sort of thing. And then using that overlay tool to also kind of map it out is really helpful. So there's summitpost.org, portlandhikersfieldguide.org, and the Washington Trail Association, WTA.org, just for some of the ones in this general area. So this is that summit overlay tool that Dan made. You can basically hide summits for a particular point value, because when you zoom way out, it gets, the whole state is just peppered with all of these summits. But anyway, so you can turn these off. They're color coordinated based on point value, and if you click on one, you can see kind of more information about it. The summit designator, how many points it is, if it has a bonus, and who it was last activated by. And then I've got, if you're interested, I've made a few videos of just some of our activations, so you can go to my YouTube website and see them that way. I brought my pack here. I've got gear. I feel like I talked really, really fast, so I'm sorry about that. I don't know what the timing is like, but are there any questions? Yes?
I was driving around Southern California this year, and on VHF, there was some guy calling, and I went back to him, and he was doing summits on the air.
Yep.
Driving around, I didn't have a pencil or anything to write down. Is there any way I can find out who it was?
Potentially. The easiest way is if, like, that same day, if you go to the Soda Watch website and see if he either alerted or somebody else spotted himself, if you at least know his call sign or have the general vague of it, that might be the best way to do it.
Taylor, another thing, do you know what peak it was that the guy was on? Do you know? Oh, okay. Yeah, if you knew what peak it was, if you remember that information, you can go to the peak there on the...
You can go to the Soda Data website,
on the Soda Data website, and
search for that peak, and then see who had activated it.
And then if the guy did a trip report on it, you can see who he was that did the activation.
You kind of need to either know the call sign or the peak, either the name or the summit designator.
I know it was somewhere down there that was 10,000 feet.
There's lots of people down there, so.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bob.
Yes, Taylor, your husband Dan, KK7DS, and John at Buddy Pole came to TIRAC, Electronic Employees Radio Club, used to be called that anyway, there's something for it, last year and gave a presentation on this. And in preparation for it, there was some information that was listed in the announcement. And so I went to the website that shows all the locations that qualify.
Okay.
And I don't remember which one it was. Anyway, I sucked up all of the latitude and longitude coordinates for Oregon, and then wrote a hack in JavaScript into a static web page using a Google API, and made a map of Oregon with all of the spots. Okay, all of them. And I was amazed. You can't go 10 miles, but there is in this one of these spots.
Right.
That's possible in all of Oregon,
right.
As opposed to Kansas, I understand, which has none.
Well, and that's what's really nice about using one of those mapping tools, so you can actually get a sense. And when we're on our way driving to one of these summits, we've got our Tough Book kind of navigating us with the mapping software. And I'll say, oh, that might be one we can do on the way back, kind of thing. So there's a lot out there. You're exactly right. Other questions? In the back?
Yes, do you have preferred bands or
Ah,
modes?
doubling, sorry.
Do you have preferred bands or modes?
Yeah, 40, 20, and 17 are some of the more common ones that we do on HF. And we pretty much always do sideband. But there are other people who will do, CW is really popular too. Okay, the other one that was in the back?
Yeah, I was wondering about the logging. Is there a particular amount of data that we need to take? Is it just like a contest?
So
the exchange.
when you submit your log, you have to say, obviously give your time, what summit you were on, who you talked to. I think, am I missing anything else? That's it. There's a notes field. I put in the signal report I gave, and then also the one that I received. So if I end up needing to do a QSL card, I'll have that data there that I can go back and look at. But that's the minimum. Yep. Someone over here?
I have a question regarding some of the summits and the activation zones. In general, we here in the West live in a fairly mountainous area, and there's a lot of SOTA sites that are all but inaccessible. The summit itself. Look particularly in the Greater Vancouver area from BC and the Fraser Valley. Some of the summits are, you really have to be almost a mountaineer to get there, let alone a casual SOTA. So
Right.
I'm asking about this 80 vertical feet or 25 meters, as I've seen in some of the European zones. When you get to somewhere that you would consider, okay, I want to operate from here, or I can operate from here, even after, say, climbing the Gross Grind or something like that, even though it might not be within the actual 80 vertical feet of the summit, but that's really as far as the guy can get to, short of doing an overnight crampon hike to someplace. What's your opinion on that sort of thing?
Well, if you're finding, there's got to be some other summits that have trails leading up to it, so that are going to be a little bit more accessible. But there are some that we've ended up bushwhacking to. The vertical or the activation zone part is a guideline. Dan, do you have any thoughts?
It's the rule. I mean, there's nothing that says that the summit has to be activatable, right? It's a geographic definition, so it's like
and
if
all,
you can't get there,
all
you can't get
summits are
there.
going to be included, so maybe pick other ones that are a little bit more accessible.
Taylor, I got
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so there's a kind of a manual that describes what you should do, shouldn't do,
Yeah.
how they classify it. There's a section in there that talks about safety, and when everybody has different capabilities on hiking and how they can get into certain areas. Some people have mountaineering experience that they can go up sheer vertical cliffs.
Yeah.
That's not me. But before you do one of these, look at it very carefully, look at reports, look at Google Map, and understand what you're getting into. Make sure that there's an easy trail. If you're just a casual trail type person, make sure the trail suits your capabilities.
Yeah.
But whatever you do, for safety purposes, never put yourself in any kind of jeopardy and bite off more than you can chew. If you get into a situation that doesn't feel right, use your gut feeling and to either back out or proceed.
And I'm as close as anyone could possibly get to the summit is not the activation zone.
Yep.
Activation zone's 80 feet, so
Yeah.
Or whatever's defined
whatever's
in
the.
the
Yeah.
reference manual. So there might have been a question or two. Okay, back there?
Is it common for the activators to put their logs onto the logbook of the world, for instance? So, for instance, he could go find that you had made contact with him and confirm it on logbook of the world, or?
I'm sure there are people that do that, yes, so that could be another.
Do you do that?
I don't.
When you get back, you don't watch?
I just do them all on the SOTA data website. As long as I get my points, that's all I do. That's right. All right, any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much.